There is a version of this place that no longer exists. It has not gone the way that things are simply forgotten, left behind without ceremony. It is gone the way a dream goes when the morning comes, present in feeling long after the details have faded, still warm somewhere behind your eyes, even when you cannot quite name what you have lost. You are about to visit that place, not as a tourist with a camera and a schedule, not as a historian with dates to remember and facts to file away. You are going to walk through it slowly, the way you would walk through a house you grew up in, the way you would run your fingers along a familiar wall in the dark, knowing exactly where every door is, every creak in the floor, every smell that belongs to a particular room at a particular hour. The place is Miami, Florida. The year is 1950, and the day is just beginning. Close your eyes for a moment, if you would like, or simply let them rest soft and unfocused, the way they do when you are watching something beautiful through a car window on a long and unhurried drive. Because what is coming is not something you need to work at. It will simply arrive the way the light does, quietly and from the east, warming things without asking permission. It is early morning, somewhere between 5 and 6, in that particular hour that belongs to no one and everyone at once. The sky above Miami is doing something extraordinary, though there is no one awake yet to tell you so. It is moving through colors that do not have names in any language, a deep blue that is slowly warming toward violet, then to a pale and luminous rose along the very edge of the horizon, just where the ocean meets the air. Biscayne Bay is flat and still. The water holds the colors of the sky the way a mirror holds a face, faithfully, without commentary, without judgment. You are standing at the edge of the water. The wooden boards beneath your feet are cool and slightly damp from the night, and they creak faintly when you shift your weight, a gentle and companionable sound in all that quiet. The bay stretches out before you, and somewhere beyond it, across the narrow strip of water, the barrier island of Miami Beach rises in a row of low, pale buildings and palm trees silhouetted against the brightening sky. You can see a few lights still on over there, a hotel lobby, perhaps, or a night fisherman who has not yet come in. The air smells of salt and something green, something almost tropical and slightly sweet, the way the air always smells near the ocean before the city wakes up and fills it with all its other purposes. A pelican glides past. It does not flap its wings. It simply soars on some invisible current, low over the water, its great pouch hanging, its eyes fixed on something below the surface that only it can see. It passes without sound, and then it is gone around the bend, and the bay is still again. There is something about Miami in this hour that asks nothing of you. The city around you, and it is a city, though a modest one by the standards of what it will one day become, is still dreaming. The population here is somewhere near 250,000 people, and almost all of them are asleep. The census takers counted them just this year, 1950, and wrote down their numbers in neat columns in offices that smell of paper and ink. But right now, those numbers mean nothing. Right now, there is only the bay and the sky, and the sound of the water moving against the pilings below your feet with a slow and rhythmic patience. You should know that this city is young, younger than you might expect from looking at the solidness of its buildings, the thickness of its banyan trees, the way it carries itself with a certain sun-warmed confidence. Miami was incorporated as a city only in 1896, just 54 years ago. Before that, it was jungle and hammock land and the territory of the Seminole people who had survived everything the 19th century had thrown at them. The railroad man, Henry Flagler, pushed his tracks down the Florida coast, and the city bloomed almost overnight around the terminus, like a flower that had been waiting underground for exactly the right moment to open. But that history is not what concerns you right now. What concerns you is this: the light is changing. The rose along the horizon is deepening to gold, and the gold is spreading upward through the blue with a slow and irresistible confidence. The first birds are beginning, not the raucous chorus that will come later when the sun is fully up and the mockingbirds are performing their ambitious repertoire from every telephone wire and rooftop. Just the first few, tentative and solitary, testing the air. A car passes somewhere behind you on Biscayne Boulevard, the first car of the morning, its headlights still on, its engine a distant and contained rumble. You hear it slow at a traffic light and then accelerate away, and then it is quiet again. The streetcar lines are still running in Miami in 1950, though not for much longer. The trolleys that clang and clatter along their tracks through the city's older neighborhoods are already being eyed with a certain impatience by city planners who have fallen in love with the automobile, with highways, with the idea that the future belongs to roads wide enough for everyone to drive at once. But for now, the tracks are there, embedded in the asphalt like dark veins, and in a few hours you will hear the familiar sound of a streetcar making its way down one of the main corridors, its bell ringing at intersections, its passengers holding the overhead straps and reading their newspapers with the practiced ease of people who have made this same journey, 100 times before by Tyree Times. You turn away from the water and begin to walk. The streets near the bay are empty in the way that empty streets are their own kind of company. Your footsteps are very loud in the silence, and then not loud at all. You adjust them, slow them, make them softer, not out of any particular reason, but simply because the morning seems to call for it. The sidewalks here are concrete, somewhat cracked in places, lifted by the roots of the royal palm trees that line the boulevard at regular intervals, like an honor guard that has been standing here for decades and intends to stand for decades more. A cat sits on the step of a small apartment building, watching you without surprise. It is an orange cat, broad and self-possessed, and its tail moves slowly from side to side with the metronome patience of a creature that has nowhere to be and knows it. You stop for a moment and look at it. It looks back at you. Then it closes its eyes and turns its face toward the warming air, and you move on. The first diner you pass is not yet open. The sign in the window says it will open at 6, and the clock above the counter inside, just visible through the plate glass, shows 20 minutes until, but there is a light on in the back, and through the small window in the kitchen door you can see the shape of someone moving, getting things ready, pulling the great coffee urn from its shelf and filling it with cold water and a careful measured amount of ground coffee. The coffee in a place like this costs a dime, 10 cents. You can sit at the counter for as long as you like, and a waitress will keep your cup filled, and the dime is all you need to pay. There is a particular quality to the anticipation of coffee in the early morning, when you can smell it beginning from half a block away, and you know that it is still a few minutes from being ready. It is one of the small, uncomplicated pleasures that this era does very well. The knowledge that something warm and good is coming, and that all you have to do is wait a short while for it. A man in a white undershirt appears at the back door of the diner, props it open with a wooden wedge, and lights a cigarette. He stands in the alley, looking up at the brightening sky, and smokes with the quiet deliberateness of someone who has earned this particular moment. He does not see you, or perhaps he does, and simply does not feel the need to acknowledge it. This is early morning, and early morning has its own code of solitude. You keep walking. The neighborhood you are moving through is neither the wealthiest nor the poorest part of Miami. It is something in between, the kind of place where the houses are modest but well kept, where the front lawns are small and green, where the screen doors are painted and the jalousie windows are cranked open to catch whatever breeze the morning is offering. The houses are mostly frame construction, painted in colors that will seem slightly faded by the time you see them in the full light of day. Pale yellow, soft green, a cream that is almost white, a pink that might once have been more emphatic but has gentled with the years and the sun. Because the sun here is serious. It is not the polite and occasional sun of the northern states. It is a tropical sun, and it has opinions about color. Somewhere in one of these houses, a radio is already on, soft, barely audible through the jalousie windows, a morning program, something easy and instrumental, the kind of music that asks nothing of you at 6 in the morning, that simply fills the air with something pleasant, something to accompany the business of getting dressed, of putting water on for coffee, of being alive at the beginning of a new day. You might begin to notice, if you are paying attention in the right way, that the rhythm of life here is calibrated differently than you are perhaps used to. Not slower, exactly, though it is slower, more like it has a different relationship with time. Time here is not something to be filled or managed or optimized. It is something to be moved through, the way you move through warm water, letting it support you, letting it take some of your weight. The sun is up now. Not fully, not blazing. It is still low in the east, still laying long shadows across the streets, still turning everything it touches to a warm and slightly amber gold. But it is definitively up, and with it comes the sense that the day has committed itself. Whatever this day will be, it has begun. The diner is open. You find a stool at the counter near the middle, where you can see the kitchen through the pass-through window, and also watch the door for whoever else might come in. The counter is a pale green formica, cleaned to a shine that reflects the fluorescent lights above in a long, blurred stripe. The napkin holder is chrome. The salt and pepper shakers are glass with chrome tops. Everything here is clean and practical and slightly beautiful in the way that practical things often are when they have been made with care. The waitress is a woman in her 40s, her dark hair pinned up under a small white cap, her uniform a pale blue that has been washed so many times it is moving toward a comfortable gray. Her name tag says Dorothy. She sets a heavy white ceramic mug in front of you without asking, and fills it from a glass coffee pot in one smooth, practiced motion that does not spill a drop, and says, "Morning, how are you today?" And you realize that she is not really asking, or rather, she is asking in the way that all the great rituals of human courtesy are both asking and not asking. It is an acknowledgement, a welcome, a small ceremony of recognition that says, "You are here, I see you, we are both alive on this particular morning in this particular place." You say, "Fine, thank you, just fine." She nods and sets a small glass creamer on the counter beside your cup and moves on to the next customer who has just come in. A man in his 60s with a careful gray mustache and a folded copy of the Miami Herald under his arm, who takes his usual stool at the far end of the counter with the ease of someone who has been sitting in the same spot for years and would feel slightly lost anywhere else. The coffee is hot and strong and slightly bitter, in the way of good diner coffee. And you wrap both hands around the mug and let the warmth move through your palms and up through your wrists and into your arms. And you sit in the particular piece of a diner in the early morning when there is nowhere you need to be and nothing you need to decide. The man with the Herald unfolds his paper and examines the front page with a small private frown. The Miami Herald costs 5 cents in 1950. For a nickel, you get everything that matters in the city and a fair amount of what matters beyond it. The paper is thick with the concerns of the age. The Korean War has been going on since June, and it takes up a great deal of space on the front pages, though here in Miami, on a summer softening into fall morning, it feels very far away. There are also stories about the latest developments in the construction of Interstate 95, which will eventually sever certain neighborhoods from each other in ways that no one quite foresees yet. And there are advertisements for department stores, for appliances, for a new housing development going up in what is now the far northwest reaches of the county, promising modern homes at prices that seem almost unimaginable. But none of this is what you came for this morning. You let the news float past like something seen through a window, present, but not insistent. Dorothy refills your coffee without being asked. This is the great unspoken contract of the diner counter. The coffee will always be there. You do not need to signal or request or thank. It simply appears hot and present, like something the morning itself is offering you. A short order cook appears in the pass-through window, his white apron already beginning to show the morning's work, and calls out 2 eggs over easy, sausage, home fries. And Dorothy tears a ticket from her pad and pins it above the grill without looking, with a precision that comes from years of the same gesture. A family comes in, parents, 2 children, a girl of perhaps 8 and a boy who is younger and still sleepy, his hair uncombed, his shirt buttoned incorrectly. They take a booth by the window. The mother opens a menu for the children, even though she knows exactly what they will order, because the ritual of looking at the menu is part of the experience, and she is a good mother who understands that children need their rituals. The father catches Dorothy's eye, and she nods once. She knows what he wants, too. Outside the window of the diner, Biscayne Boulevard is beginning to fill with the morning's traffic. Not heavy, not urgent, just the regular accumulation of cars and the occasional delivery truck making its way through the warming air. A man on a bicycle coasts past, his basket in front holding a paper bag that might be his lunch or might be something he is delivering. A woman in a yellow dress waits at a bus stop, her purse on her arm, her face turned toward the direction the bus will come from. The bus system here is called Miami Transit Company, and it serves the city with a network of routes that, if you study them on a map, tell you something interesting about which neighborhoods the city considers worth connecting and which it does not. This is 1950, and the buses are segregated, as is nearly everything else in this part of Florida. The white passengers sit toward the front. The black passengers sit toward the back. It is a fact of the time, stated plainly, felt daily by thousands of people in ways both large and small and grinding. The Overtown neighborhood, just a few blocks west of here, is a world unto itself, a thriving, vibrant, almost entirely self-contained community of black residents who have built their own hotels and theaters and restaurants and businesses precisely because the rest of Miami is closed to them. Mary Elizabeth Hotel, the Lyric Theater, the clubs along 2nd Avenue where some of the greatest jazz musicians in the country perform on their way through on the Chitlin. Circuit musicians who cannot stay in the hotels on Miami Beach, but who fill those hotels, showrooms with the music that white audiences have decided they want to hear. All of this is there, just beyond the edges of the pleasant morning you are moving through. It is part of the city in 1950, woven into it, inseparable from it, even if the comfortable world of the diner counter and the morning coffee works hard to pretend otherwise. You hold this knowledge gently, without drama, because that is how most people hold the complicated facts of their own times, not with full awareness, not with none, but somewhere in the uncomfortable middle. Dorothy sets a plate of eggs and toast in front of you that you did not order, but somehow do not mind. You eat slowly, looking out the window at the boulevard and the people beginning their morning. And when you are done, you leave a quarter on the counter, 10 cents for the coffee, a nickel for the eggs and toast, and 10 cents more because Dorothy has been cheerful and efficient and deserves it. And you step back out into the Miami morning, which has by now fully committed to being warm. It will be hot by midday. Miami in 1950 does not have central air conditioning in most of its buildings. That particular revolution is still a decade or more away from being fully democratized, though the window units have begun to appear in the wealthier hotels and the newer office buildings, humming and dripping their small rivers of condensation onto the sidewalk below. For now, Miami keeps cool the old way. Jalousie windows cranked open to the trade winds, ceiling fans turning slow and steady overhead, wide porches designed to catch the breeze, the shade of the royal palms and the great live oaks draped with Spanish moss out in the older neighborhoods. You know this warmth? There is something about it that is not unpleasant. It is not the aggressive heat of midday, not yet. It is the warmth of a morning that is being generous with you, that is wrapping itself around you like something familiar and uncomplicated. You head toward the beach. The causeway across Biscayne Bay is a piece of engineering that never stops being slightly miraculous, even if you cross it every day. It rises from the mainland, carrying the road over the water in a long, shallow arc, and from the highest point of that arc you can see, on a clear morning like this one, all the way down the bay in both directions. North toward the old Venetian causeway with its succession of artificial islands, south toward the distant towers of Coral Gables peaking above the tree line. The water below is a particular shade of blue-green that you will not find on any color chart and that photographers have been failing to capture accurately since the first Kodachrome was loaded into the first camera on this coast. It is real, that color. It is just bigger than photographs know how to hold. A man is fishing from the railing of the causeway, his line trailing down into the water, his face entirely peaceful. He has a canvas folding stool and a small cooler, and he appears to have been here for some time already, settled into the particular stillness of fishermen everywhere, who have made their peace with the fact that the fish will come or they will not come, and either way, the morning will be beautiful. You do not stop to talk to him. You simply note him as you note all the small human presences that fill a morning like this one, each of them in their own world, each of them connected by the simple fact of being alive and awake in the same place at the same time. Miami Beach, when you arrive, is different from the city you left on the other side of the water. It is smaller, for one thing, a narrow barrier island, the widest parts of it barely a mile across, and in many places much less. The streets are laid out in a grid that runs north and south along the ocean, and the buildings that line them tell the story of several different eras of ambition. The Art Deco buildings of the South Beach area were built mostly in the 1930s and early 40s, and they are still relatively new. Their pastel facades and their porthole windows and their eyebrow shades still sharp and confident. In the mid-beach area, farther north, the hotels are larger and newer. Some of them built in the late 40s with the optimism of a country that has survived a war and is ready to enjoy itself. The greatest of these hotels line Collins Avenue, and they are, even at this hour of the morning, beginning to stir. The bellmen are at their posts in their red uniforms and their white gloves. The doormen are opening the great glass doors for the first early risers who want coffee brought to them on the terrace overlooking the pool. The pools at the large hotels are heated, or at least maintained at a temperature that makes getting into them before 10 in the morning an act of intention rather than courage. The guests at these hotels come mostly from the north, from New York and Chicago and Philadelphia and Cleveland. They come because Miami Beach in 1950 is still something of a destination, still a place where you go to say that you have been, to see the celebrities who winter here, to eat in the restaurants whose names you read about in the gossip columns, to sit on a beach that in January is warm enough to sit on when everywhere else in the country is buried under snow. But it is not January, it is fall, the quieter season, the shoulder season, the time when the genuine Miamians reclaim their city from the tourists and the snowbirds and go about their lives with a comfortable proprietary ease. The hotels are not empty, but they are not full either. There is room to breathe. You find your way to the beach. The boardwalk here is wooden, and it runs along the back of the beach, and the sand beyond it is wide and white, and at this hour, nearly empty. There are perhaps a dozen people on the beach, a few early swimmers, a couple walking together along the waterline, a man sitting alone in a low beach chair, reading a paperback novel with his feet dug into the cool morning sand. An old woman in a dark bathing suit and a rubber cap stands at the edge of the water, testing it with her toe, then wading in with the careful, deliberate motion of someone who has done this every morning for 20 years and has no intention of stopping now. The ocean here is the Atlantic, and it is a different animal from the bay. Where the bay is sheltered and still, the ocean has opinions. It moves. Today it is mild. The waves are small, maybe 2 feet at the break, and they come in rhythmically with the patient repetition of something that has been doing this for millions of years and is not tired yet. The sound of them is the sound you have been hearing your whole life in certain kinds of music, in certain kinds of rooms, in certain half-remembered moments of particular peace. The sand is cool where you stand. The sun has not had enough time yet to heat it through. You slip off your shoes and carry them, and the sand shifts pleasantly between your toes, fine-grained and almost white, and you walk down toward the water's edge, where the sand is darker and firmer from the retreating tide. A wave comes in. It covers your feet in cool water, not cold, not quite, but cool enough to be a small surprise, a small pleasure. It pulls back and leaves a thin line of foam that disappears into the sand even as you watch it, absorbed, gone as if it never was. You might stay here for a while. There is no particular reason to hurry. The morning has arranged itself around you with a generous patience, and it is asking nothing of you but that you be present in it. The couple walking the waterline has reached the end of the beach and turned back without any apparent discussion, simply reversing direction with the ease of 2 people who have been walking together long enough that words are not always necessary. The man with the paperback has turned a page. The old woman is swimming now, her stroke efficient and unhurried, her rubber cap a small bright dot on the surface of the water. A seagull lands near your feet and examines you with one yellow eye. It is hoping for something, the way seagulls always are, but you have nothing to offer it. And after a moment, it decides you are not worth the investment of further attention and launches itself back into the air with a single powerful downstroke and glides away down the beach, scanning the sand below with professional thoroughness. You stand at the water's edge for a long time, long enough for the sun to climb several degrees higher in the sky and to begin making its intentions known with something more than warmth. The beach around you has filled slightly, not crowded, not even close, but populated enough now that you are aware of other people going about the pleasant business of being at the beach on a fine morning. Children are beginning to appear, supervised and occasionally not, carrying their pails and their determination. A young woman in a one-piece bathing suit is arranging herself on a towel with the serious attention that sunbathing requires in 1950, when it is not yet known, not fully, what the sun is doing to the skin, and the deep tan that she is working toward is considered a sign of health and leisure rather than anything else. There is something about this place that will change enormously in the decades to come. You can feel it if you are paying attention in the right way, not as a premonition, not as any kind of dramatic foresight, but simply as the awareness that something this beautiful and this new is never static for long. Miami Beach in 1950 is at a particular point in its story, old enough to have character and young enough to still be becoming something. The great hotels will multiply. The famous faces will come and go. The population will shift and change in ways that no one here today can fully predict. The Cuban families who begin arriving in larger numbers at the end of this decade will transform the city across the water in ways that will make it unlike anything that exists anywhere else on Earth. But that is all still to come. Right now, there is only the beach and the waves, and the sound of children laughing somewhere to your left, and the particular quality of this morning's light, which is the kind of light that makes everything it falls on look like something worth remembering. You are hungry again, or perhaps not hungry, perhaps just ready to move, to be somewhere different, to continue the day. You walk back up through the sand to the boardwalk, brush your feet off, put your shoes back on, and head inland toward Collins Avenue, toward the hotels and the shops and the particular life of this narrow island in the middle of the morning. Collins Avenue at 10 in the morning is beginning to find its rhythm. The hotel lobbies are in full operation. Guests checking in, guests checking out. Luggage being handled by young men in uniforms who carry it with practiced ease up the ramps and into the elevators, and through the carpeted corridors to the rooms that overlook either the pool or the ocean, or if you did not reserve early enough, the parking lot. The rate at many of the mid-range hotels on Collins Avenue in 1950 runs between $3 and $8 a night, depending on the season and the view. A double room at one of the grand hotels on the oceanfront can run considerably more, $15 or $20 in high season, which seems a great deal to most people, though if you are the kind of person who stays at those hotels, you have long since stopped doing the arithmetic. The shops along the avenue are open. There is a drugstore with a soda fountain, a long marble counter with spinning stools, behind which a teenage boy is learning the art of the ice cream soda with the help of an older soda jerk who has been doing this since before the boy was born. The flavors are simple and good: vanilla, chocolate, strawberry. There is no rum raisin, no salted caramel, no artisanal anything. There is just ice cream, cold and sweet and generous. And the boy is beginning to understand that getting the cream just right in the soda requires a particular wrist action that cannot be taught, only practiced. A woman comes into the drugstore and sits at the soda fountain and orders a cherry Coke syrup added to the Coke at the fountain, not the canned version that will come later, and reads a magazine while she drinks it through a striped paper straw. The magazine is Life, and on its cover is a photograph of someone famous, though from where you are sitting you cannot quite read the name. The cover is bright and confident, the way Life covers always are in this era, as if the magazine is saying, this is what life looks like, and life looks good. A man in a lightweight summer suit, seersucker, pale blue stripes, comes into the drugstore and buys a pack of Lucky Strikes and a roll of Lifesavers and a newspaper, and pays with a couple of coins and leaves without lingering. He has the purposeful air of someone with meetings, with plans, with things that need doing. But even he moves with a cadence that is unhurried by the standards of anywhere north of here. The climate has its way with people. Outside, a taxi sits at the curb, with its engine idling quietly. The driver, a man of about 50, with a broad face and a gray cap, has his arm out the window and is watching the street with the particular patient attention of taxi drivers everywhere, who spend their professional lives in a kind of moving meditation, observing the human comedy from the front seat of their office on wheels. The cab is a Chevrolet, black and yellow, its body clean but not new. The meter inside reads 0. He catches your eye and raises an eyebrow. You shake your head. Not yet, perhaps later. He nods and returns to his observation of the street. The morning continues. You find a bench in the small park that runs between Collins Avenue and the beach, and you sit for a while in the shade of a coconut palm that is leaning slightly toward the water, as coconut palms always seem to be, as if they are listening for something in the direction of the ocean. The fronds move overhead in the light sea breeze with a dry, whispering sound that is one of the most completely tropical sounds in the world. Not dramatic, not loud, just present, just there, just this particular rustling that says, you are in a warm place near the ocean, and everything is all right. A man walks by with a dog on a leather leash, a beagle, trotting with the focused enthusiasm of a dog on a morning walk, its nose working the air, its tail a steady metronome. The man nods to you. You nod back. The beagle glances over without breaking stride, and then the two of them move on, and you watch them until they round a corner and are gone. There's something about this island, this particular strip of sand, with its hotels and its shops and its determined pleasantness, that works on you in a way that is hard to name. It is partly the light. The light here has a quality that painters have been trying to capture for decades, a quality that has to do with the water on both sides, with the way the sun is reflected back from two different surfaces at once, from the bay to the west and the ocean to the east, so that you are always in a kind of gentle ambient radiance, even when you are in shade. It is partly the smells, the salt, the sunscreen, the coconut, the cut grass of the small parks, the faint diesel of the passing buses. It is partly the sound, which is almost never silent, almost never loud, always this middle register of human activity going about its business in a moderate and reasonable way. But mostly it is something harder to identify. It is the feeling that here, in this place, in this year, the world has arranged itself into a configuration that is not permanent, but is, for now, livable. That the pieces are fitting together in a way that makes sense to the people living inside of it. that there is something to work toward, something to rest in, something to return to at the end of the day. You might stay on this bench for a long time. The morning has given you permission, but the morning does not last forever. Even the most generous mornings eventually give way to noon, and noon in Miami in late 1950 is a serious proposition. The sun is directly overhead now, or close enough that the shadows have retreated to almost nothing, tucking themselves under the benches and the palm trees and the overhangs of the shop awnings, where they wait with the patience of things that know their time will come back. The air has thickened with heat. Not oppressively, there is still a breeze off the ocean. There is almost always a breeze off the ocean here, which is one of the things that makes Miami survivable in the days before universal air conditioning. But the warmth has a weight to it now, a presence, a kind of insistence that this is Florida, and you are in it, and you should arrange your activities accordingly. The sensible arrangement, the arrangement that every person who has lived here for more than one summer has arrived at independently, is to eat a good midday meal, to rest during the hottest part of the afternoon, and to save the more ambitious activities for the evening, when the sun has lowered its demands and the air has begun to carry the long, slow exhale of the day's heat back up into the sky. You are hungry now, genuinely hungry, and the restaurant you find yourself in front of is the right kind of place for midday on a weekday. A Cuban lunch counter that has been operating in the same spot since 1942, when a family from Havana decided that what Miami needed was properly made Cuban food and proceeded to provide it with an enthusiasm that has never diminished. The name of the place is painted on the window in gold letters that are peeling slightly at the edges, but the letters themselves are confident and clear. Inside, it is cool by comparison to the street. A single large window unit in the wall does its considerable best, and the ceiling fans above add their circular contribution, and together they create an interior climate that is several degrees below the sidewalk and feels, after the walk here, like mercy. The place is full. Every stool at the counter is taken, and most of the small tables along the wall, but you find a seat at the end of the counter near the window, which gives you a view of both the street outside and the organized chaos of the kitchen through the opening in the back wall. The man behind the counter is named Roberto. You learn this from the woman at the table next to you, who calls out to him in Spanish, and he answers in kind. And from the brief exchange, you gather that she is a regular, and he is, as always, very busy. Roberto is about 40, with thick dark hair and a white apron, and the particular efficiency of a man who has spent years moving between the same 30 square feet of space and has eliminated every unnecessary motion. He is at once everywhere and nowhere, filling a water glass here, sliding a plate there, calling an order back to the kitchen, making change at the register, all without apparent hurry, all with the smooth economy of genuine mastery. The menu is on a small board above the counter, written in Spanish and English, and the English translations are helpful, but not quite sufficient, not because they are inaccurate, but because certain things do not fully translate. Ropa vieja, for instance, which the menu translates as braised, shredded beef, but which is really something more than that. A dish with a history and a texture and a particular savoriness that comes from the slow work of the pot and the specific combination of tomatoes and peppers and onions and cumin that Roberto's mother taught him, and that he has taught himself to reproduce with a fidelity that still surprises him sometimes, late at night, when the restaurant is closed and he is eating his own food alone in the kitchen. You order the picadillo seasoned ground beef with olives and raisins and tomatoes, served over white rice with black beans on the side, and a small basket of Cuban bread that is nothing like any other bread you have ever eaten. Lighter and crustier, and somehow both of those things at once, and still warm from the bakery 3 blocks away that baked it at 5 this morning and has been selling it all day. The black beans alone are worth the trip. They have been cooking since last night in a pot that is never entirely empty. Because Roberto's approach to black beans is that the pot is its own argument for continuity. You never empty it completely. You always add more beans, more water, more sofrito. You let the long history of previous batches inform the new ones, until after years of this practice, the beans have a depth of flavor that cannot be achieved any other way. You eat slowly because the food deserves it, and because the heat outside argues for taking your time, and because there is really nowhere you need to be. The counter around you is filled with the easy conversation of lunch regulars, construction workers, office workers from the building across the street, a couple of fishermen who have been out since before dawn and are now eating with the focused satisfaction of people who have already accomplished the most important thing they will do today. A man 2 stools down from you is having a conversation with Roberto about the upcoming Thanksgiving weekend, about whether the traffic on Dixie Highway is going to be manageable or catastrophic. Roberto says, manageable if you leave before 7 in the morning, catastrophic if you wait for 8. The man nods. They are both right. Roberto refills your water glass and asks if you want more bread. You do. He brings it without ceremony, a small, warm basket, and returns to the organized improvisation of keeping the lunch service moving. Outside the window, the sidewalk shimmers faintly in the heat. A delivery truck has double parked on the street, and the driver and another man are unloading wooden crates from the back with smooth, practiced movements, stacking them on a dolly, wheeling them toward a side door. A woman in a wide-brimmed straw hat walks past, her shopping bag on her arm, her stride unhurried. A teenage boy on a bicycle threads between the parked cars with the careless precision of youth. This is what Miami looks like at noon on a weekday in 1950. Not glamorous, exactly. Not the Miami of the travel posters and the movie star sightings and the moonlit dance floors of the hotel nightclubs. Just real. Just people going about their lives in the particular way that people go about their lives in a particular city in a particular year, shaped by the place and the climate and the history and the economics and all the other invisible forces that make one city feel different from every other. You finish your meal, leave a generous tip. The picadillo with the beans and rice and bread has cost you 85 cents, which is a perfectly good price, and step back out into the afternoon. The afternoon in Miami in 1950 belongs to the west side of the city. If Miami Beach is the face that Miami shows the tourists, the hotels, the beaches, the nightclubs, the glamour, then Coral Gables is the face it shows itself, or at least the face of a certain aspiration. Coral Gables was built in the 1920s by a developer named George Merrick, who had a vision of a planned community so complete and so specific that it included not just the streets and the houses, but the architectural style of every building, the materials from which every wall would be made, the width of every boulevard, the number and placement of every tree. The result is something that 30 years later in 1950 feels less like a suburb than like a small city that arrived fully formed, with its plazas and its fountains and its fountains and its Mediterranean revival, building in its Mediterranean, its bugany bilia bilio, bougainvilleas from Billy Sippes Biller with a menby by with the prippy by spa and san miss a quin with and pring in rin in bay is in a It's really nice. It's the ice and it's a fan. It's a boy beneath with the ace. With the days with the hoop. I could have seen You take the bus, a Miami Transit Company bus, one of the newer models, cleaner inside than you might expect, with wicker seats and some of the older ones that have been replaced with leather or leatherette in the newer models, all of them with the windows open to whatever air they can gather as they move. The bus costs 15 cents, and you climb on through the front door and drop your coins in the box and find a seat near the window. The route takes you south and west through neighborhoods that shift in character as you go. The commercial blocks near downtown give way to residential streets where the houses are larger and set. Back from the sidewalk behind modest gardens, the trees get bigger, older, more confident. Royal poinciana trees, which in the spring will explode into that particular shade of orange-red that looks impossible until you see it, are bare of flowers now in this season, but their canopy is wide and generous, making a tunnel of green over some of the streets that feels genuinely magical even in the ordinary afternoon light. Coral Gables announces itself with a series of entrance gates, monumental stone structures that Merrick built at the major approaches to his planned city, some of them restored and maintained, some of them slightly the worse for the years, but all of them still impressive, still communicating something about intention and vision. You get off the bus at the stop near the Miracle Mile, which is what Coral Gables calls its main commercial street, a name that is aspirational but not entirely wrong, because the block of shops and restaurants and offices along Coral Way does feel somehow more curated, more deliberate than ordinary commercial streets elsewhere in the city. There is a shoe store, a dress shop, a men's clothing shop where a tailor is measuring a customer with unhurried precision, the fabric draped over his arm, his chalk making small marks that will eventually become a suit jacket that fits perfectly. A pharmacy, a small grocery where the owner knows most of his customers by name. A bookstore. You go into the bookstore. It is the kind of bookstore that understands what a bookstore is for. The shelves are tall and slightly cramped and arranged with a logic that the owner understands completely, but that is not immediately obvious to anyone else. And this is part of the pleasure, the slight mystery of where things are. The possibility of finding something unexpected on a shelf where you were looking for something entirely different. The light inside is dim and warm. There is a cat on a chair near the back. There are chairs near the back because the owner understands that people sometimes need to sit down with a book before they decide whether to buy it. You browse for a while. The paperback rack near the front has the usual assortment: detective novels, romance, westerns, a few literary titles that have been translated into the mass market edition. The hardcovers in the back are more ambitious: history, biography, poetry, fiction that takes itself seriously. There is a copy of Hemingway's Across the River and Into the Trees, which came out this year and which the critics have not been kind to, though the people who love Hemingway will read anything he writes and make their own judgments. You pick up a travel book, a guide to Cuba, specifically because Cuba in 1950 is only 90 miles from where you are standing. and the regular ferries and flights between Miami and Havana make it as close in practice as it is in miles. The book describes Havana's hotels and restaurants and nightlife with the enthusiasm of someone who has spent a very good week there and wants to share the experience. It is cheap to go. A ferry ticket can be had for a few dollars, and once there, the peso and the dollar trade at roughly equal value, making everything seem affordable to an American traveler. Havana in 1950 is still a city of considerable glamour and considerable contradictions, still presided over by President Batista, still drawing wealthy Americans who find in its casinos and its clubs and its particular looseness from mainland American social conventions a kind of freedom that feels for a long weekend like what freedom is supposed to feel like. But all of that is across the water. You set the book back on its shelf and thank the bookstore owner, who nods from behind the counter without looking up from the catalog he is studying. And you step back out into the Coral Gables afternoon. The light has shifted. It does that in Florida in a way that is different from anywhere north of here. The light has a quality in the late afternoon that is almost lateral, that comes in at an angle that catches everything sideways, that makes the coral rock of the buildings glow with an inner warmth and turns the shadows long and dramatic and blue. It is not yet the golden hour, not quite, but it is heading there, and you can feel the day beginning its long, slow descent toward evening. A woman is watering the garden in front of a house on a side street off the mile. She has a hose, and she is directing a gentle arc of water across a bed of bird of paradise plants, and the water catches the afternoon light as it falls, and for a moment it looks like something from a painting, or from a dream, or from exactly this kind of afternoon, in exactly this kind of city. You walk. The streets of Coral Gables invite walking in a way that not all streets do. The sidewalks are wide. The trees provide real shade. The scale of things, the buildings, the blocks, the distances between things is calibrated to the human body rather than to the car, which is unusual in a city that is otherwise firmly committed to the automobile as the primary mode of transportation and the organizing principle of the landscape. Merrick planned his city in the 20s before the full triumph of the car, and some of that earlier understanding of how people move through space survived into the built environment and is still felt now, in the way the afternoon invites you to slow down and look at things. A pair of elderly men are playing chess at a table in a small plaza near a fountain. The fountain is running a simple circular basin with a central column from which water falls, and the sound of it fills the plaza with a coolness that is partly actual and partly psychological, but either way effective. The chess players are oblivious to you, to the fountain, to the late afternoon light doing its theatrical best on the coral rock walls around them. They are in the world of the board, which has its own rules and its own light and its own time. You find a bench near the fountain and sit. A couple walks by, arm in arm, clearly comfortable with each other in the way of people who have been together long enough to have stopped worrying about whether they are doing it right. They are talking about something, their voices are low and their faces are animated, but you cannot hear the words, only the rhythm of it, the easy back and forth, the occasional shared laugh. They pass and are gone, leaving only the sound of the fountain and the chess players and a bird singing from somewhere in the bougainvillea above your head. There's something about sitting near a fountain in the afternoon that does something particular to time. Time near a fountain moves differently. It slows in a way that is not boredom, not restlessness, but genuine repose, the kind of slowing down that your body needs and rarely gets. You sit there for a while, letting the afternoon pass at its own pace. When you stand up again, the light has definitely shifted. It is golden now, properly golden, the long raking light of early evening that makes every leaf and every stone and every person in it look as if they have been lit by someone who knows exactly what they are doing. The shadows are long and blue. The air has cooled by a few degrees, enough to feel like a gift. It is time to head back toward the water. The bus ride back to Miami proper takes you through a neighborhood that does not have a formal name yet in 1950, but which will eventually come to be called Little Havana, though that naming is still years away, waiting for the particular wave of Cuban immigration that the revolution of 1959 will set in motion. Right now, this neighborhood is a mix of older Jewish families and some Cuban families who have been in Miami since the 30s and 40s, merchants and workers and small business owners who have made a life in this part of the city that runs along Southwest 8th Street, which everyone here calls Kale Ocho, even when they are speaking English. The bodega on the corner is open. Through the window, you can see the shelves of canned goods and dry goods, the small refrigerated case with the cheeses and the meats, the older man behind the counter reading a Spanish-language newspaper, El Diario de la Marina, which arrives from Havana with a regularity that the distance would suggest was impossible, but that somehow works, a small miracle of logistics between two cities that are more connected than the 90 miles of water between them would suggest. The smell coming from the bakery next door to the bodega is something you could follow for blocks. Cuban bread, yes, but also pastries, the pastelitos, the small folded pastries filled with guava and cheese or with ground beef, that are one of the great small things of Cuban cuisine in Miami. They are made here by a woman named Alina, who has been making them since she was 12 years old, learning from her grandmother in a kitchen in Havana, and she has made them every morning since she arrived in Miami in 1938. And she will make them every morning for the next 30 years, and her daughter will make them after her. And the pastelitos of this particular bakery on this particular corner of Southwest 8th Street will be one of the unbroken threads that connects the Miami of 1952, the Miami that is still to come. You do not go in, though the smell is persuasive. You have dinner plans, or at least the intention of dinner, and you do not want to compromise what is to come. The evening is beginning. Downtown Miami at 6 in the evening has a particular quality that belongs to those hours when the workday is ending and the night has not yet begun. That transitional time when the same streets that were full of purpose an hour ago are now filling with a different kind of purpose. People moving toward restaurants, toward home, toward wherever the evening will take them. The office workers are coming out of the buildings in their groups of 2 and 3. The men loosening their ties slightly as they hit the sidewalk, the women repinning their hair against the freshening evening breeze. The trolley is full, the buses are full, the parking lots are releasing their daily accumulation of automobiles into the regular evening flood. There is a bar on Flagler Street that you pass, its door open to the street, its interior visible as a narrow, warmly lit corridor of men on stools at a bar that runs the length of the room, each of them with a beer or a highball glass in front of them. All of them in the particular relaxed decompression of the first drink after the workday. The sound that comes out is the sound of a room full of men talking about things that are not work, or about work in the way that is not really about work, about the day, about what happened, about what didn't happen, about the game. On the radio behind the bar, a sports announcer is doing something with his voice. You can hear the cadence, if not the words, that suggests something important is happening somewhere in the world of baseball or football, which in this season could be either. You keep walking toward the restaurant you have in mind, which is on Biscayne Boulevard, which is to say, it has a view of the bay if you are seated on the right side, which you plan to be. The restaurant is not the grandest in Miami, not by a long way, but it is the right size, intimate enough to feel like a destination, large enough not to feel like someone's living room. The menu features the kind of food that Miami restaurants in 1950 do well. Fresh fish, obviously caught today and prepared simply, the way fish that good deserves to be prepared. Stone crab claws, which are in season and which are a Florida delicacy that visitors sometimes overlook in favor of the things they know from home. A good iceberg lettuce salad with the Thousand Island dressing that is the standard of this era and is in fact very good when done right. Rolls. Butter. The whole ceremony of a proper sit-down dinner in a city that still takes sit-down dinners seriously. The waiter, a man about 30, dark-haired, efficient, with the careful, professional manner of someone who has decided that waiting tables well is worth doing, and doing with dignity, shows you to a table by the window. The sun is setting now over the western edge of the city, and the light on the bay is extraordinary, doing that thing that the bay light does in the evening when it turns from blue to gold to a deep glowing bronze, and the reflections of the city's lights are beginning to appear on the water even before the sky is fully dark. You order the grouper, which the waiter recommends with the confidence of someone who has eaten it himself, and a glass of iced tea, sweet because you are in Florida, and Florida takes its sweet tea seriously, and you sit with your hands folded on the white tablecloth and watch the evening happen outside the window cloth, to Eppenbaus out, to endo slow, to bendo sand do it, with a billow bend out, set and how is cunning it, and it in it is in des, in if it is, it's and isolate, and it is, it's the best it is, a boat is moving across the bay, its running lights on, its engine a distant thrum. The pelicans that have been working the bay all day are heading somewhere. They have a roost somewhere in the mangroves to the south, and every evening they move toward it in small formations. Low over the water, those great prehistoric wings barely moving, those patient eyes reading the surface below. You watch 3 of them glide past the window in succession and disappear toward the south. The grouper arrives. It is everything the waiter promised, simply prepared, the flesh, white and firm and sweet, with a squeeze of lemon and a sprig of parsley and nothing else, because nothing else is needed. With it comes a baked potato, which someone in the kitchen has understood is not something to be rushed, and green beans cooked in the southern manner with a piece of salt pork for flavor, soft and savory, and about as far from fashionable as food can be in 1950, which is exactly right. You eat slowly. The restaurant is filling now. Couples, families, a few businessmen entertaining clients, a birthday party at the large table in the back corner where a woman of about 60 is receiving toasts and flowers and the particular kind of affectionate attention that 60 deserves when it has been lived well. You can tell from across the room that she has lived it well. Something in the way she holds her glass, the way she listens when people speak, the quality of the laughter that rises from that table at regular intervals. At the table next to you, a man and a woman are on what appears to be a date. Not their first, but perhaps their third or fourth. which is the most interesting kind because the nervousness of the first few dates has settled into something that is beginning to feel like ease, but the ease is still new enough that it surprises them occasionally, that they still catch each other's eye and find something there that they did not entirely expect. They are sharing a piece of key lime pie for dessert, which is the right dessert for this city on this evening. The sharp tartness of it perfectly calibrated against the sweetness of the evening and the warmth of the restaurant, and the particular mood that comes when the day has been good and the night is promising. Outside the window, the bay is dark now, and the lights of Miami Beach across the water are reflected in long shimmering columns on the black surface, and the sky above is full of stars in a way that it will not always be, in the way that skies full of stars always have an implicit end date in cities that are growing the way Miami is growing. But tonight, the stars are there, and the city is not yet bright enough to entirely erase them, and you can sit at the table by the window and see both the city and the stars, and let them coexist for this one evening, in this one year, before the future gets around to deciding which of them takes priority. You order the key lime pie. It arrives in a wedge of perfect pale yellow, the crust graham cracker and slightly crumbly, the filling dense and trembling slightly when you touch it with the fork, and the first bite is everything. The tartness that makes you sit up slightly, the sweetness that follows, the richness of the eggs in the filling, the way all of it comes together into something that is genuinely specific to this place, that could not have been invented anywhere else, that is as much a product of this latitude and this soil and this history as anything is soil, and this history as anything is history, as anything is any's. With any's is any's held, with any's with onets, but essit as in is as at the is send is a ben is enent. It's size, ja, das ist exget I have it is as the is You sit with the rest of your coffee and watch the last few boats cross the bay, and you think about the day you have had, the early morning by the water, the diner, the beach, the lunch, the afternoon in Coral Gables, the evening here by the window, and it seems to you that it has been a full day, a properly full day, the kind that only happens when you are nowhere specific and everywhere at once, when you are paying attention in all directions, when you let the place show you what it is rather than telling it what you need it to be. The waiter comes by with the check and you pay it dinner for one, including the pie and the 2 glasses of iced tea, comes to $2.40, which seems to you a very good price for the evening you have had, and you leave a 50-cent tip and gather yourself to go. The night air outside the restaurant is warm but not hot, carrying the salt of the bay and a faint trace of something blooming somewhere, jasmine perhaps, or night blooming cereus, which opens only after dark in a bloom so extravagant and so brief that you almost miss it if you are not paying attention. The boulevard is less busy now than it was an hour ago. The commuters have gone home. The restaurants are full. The bars are full. The movie theaters, the Olympia, the Paramount, the Miracle are in the middle of their evening shows, their lobbies quiet for another hour until the last reel ends and the audience spills back out onto the sidewalk. A couple walks by, holding hands, not talking, simply being in the evening together. A man is walking a dog, a different dog from the one this morning. A larger dog, a German shepherd, its claws clicking on the sidewalk, its ears alert to everything. A taxi slows as it passes you, its driver looking for a fare, and you shake your head gently and it moves on. You are not ready to go in yet. The night is too good for that. You walk south along the boulevard toward the park at Bayfront, which at this hour is almost empty. A few couples on the benches, a solitary figure feeding the ducks at the edge of the water, a man in a white linen jacket standing with his hands in his pockets, looking out at the bay with the private expression of someone who has a lot to think about and has chosen this particular water at this particular hour to think it in. The park smells of grass and salt and the faint sweetness of the night-blooming flowers that someone planted along the paths decades ago and that have been making this offering every night since. The path lamps are on, casting small circles of yellow light on the concrete below, and in between the circles, the darkness is comfortable, not threatening the darkness of a city park at night that has been given over to quietness and the occasional soft conversation and the sound of the water. You find a bench facing the bay and sit. The water is very dark now and very still, and across it, the lights of Miami Beach make their bright and generous reflection. And above it all, the sky is doing its night work. The stars overhead competing with the city below in a contest that neither side is quite winning. And you sit in the middle of it and feel, for a moment, very precisely located in the world. Not lost, not found, but here in this specific place, in this specific time, in this specific time, in this specific evening that is unlike any other evening and will not come again. This is what cities feel like when they are alive. Not the monuments, not the famous things, not the grand statements. Just this, the ordinary evening, the people going home, the lights coming on, the water doing what water does, the whole complicated living, breathing thing of a city arranging and rearranging itself in the dark. Miami in 1950 is a city that is about to change enormously. It does not know this yet, or rather, it does not know the specifics, though there are people here who can feel the pressure building, who can sense that the relative stability of this particular arrangement of things is temporary, that the forces gathering just outside the frame, the Cuban families who will arrive in great waves after 915 lanes, the civil rights movement gathering momentum just over the horizon, the highway construction that will sever Overtown from downtown and change the character of the whole city, the building boom that will push the boundaries of the whole city, the building boom that will push the boundaries of an burger into what is now ever in where it's now by his thanks. Is his house things, is in this things of NRES, and is an RS can in seven, xin it is, and in res, as in ibad, yes, as it, I said, as is that, as, again, it's, and we've, it's the big set me, but sitting here by the bay in the night air with the warm darkness all around you and the lights of Miami Beach reflected in the water and the sound of the city settling into its nighttime rhythms, all of that is the future, and the future has not arrived yet. What is here is this. A mockingbird starts up in a tree somewhere behind you. Mockingbirds are one of the constants of the Florida night, willing to sing at any hour, capable of cycling through dozens of other bird songs in a single unbroken performance. This one is doing something complicated, something that includes what sounds like a car horn and a catbird and a cardinal and something entirely its own. And it is doing it with the unpretentious virtuosity of a creature that has no idea it is performing, that is simply making the sounds it makes because the night is right for it, and there is no reason not to. You listen to it for a while. Then you get up from the bench and walk slowly back through the park, past the couple on the bench who are kissing now without particular urgency, past the man in the white jacket who is still at the water's edge and has perhaps resolved whatever he was thinking about, or perhaps has not passed the duck feeder who has used up his bread and is standing and stretching with the satisfied air of someone who has done a good thing, however small. The street beyond the park is quiet. A single car passes. A radio plays in an apartment above a shop, something Latin, something with a rhythm that is both complicated and effortless, the way good Latin music always is, the way it makes the rhythm seem like the simplest thing in the world, even when the musicians are doing things that take decades to learn. You stand on the sidewalk for a moment and let it wash over you. Then you walk on into the Miami night. The hotel you are staying in is on the Miami beach side of the water, and getting there means crossing the bay again, either by the causeway or by one of the late-running water taxis that serve as a quieter alternative. A smaller and more intimate crossing. You choose the water taxi. The dock is a small wooden affair at the edge of Bayfront Park, and the boat is a modest craft, maybe 30 feet long. Its wooden hull painted white, its cabin open at the sides to the night air. The captain, a man of perhaps 60, with a weathered face and the particular ease of movement that people who spend their lives on the water develop, a kind of rolling grace that translates oddly to land, is waiting with the engine running at a low idle, which makes a sound that is somewhere between a purr and a thrum, felt as much as heard, a vibration in the boards beneath your feet. There are two other passengers, an older couple in their 70s, he in a dark suit and she in a light dress and pearls, who are returning from what appears to have been a dinner out on the town. There is a faint aura of good food and perhaps a glass or two of wine about them, the comfortable aftermath of an evening well spent. They settle into the seats at the back of the boat with the ease of people who have made this crossing many times. The captain casts off. The engine deepens. The boat moves away from the dock with a slow deliberateness, easing out into the open water of the bay. There is no feeling quite like being on the water at night in a small boat. The city recedes behind you, the lights of the mainland, the street lamps, the illuminated windows of the apartments and hotels along Biscayne Boulevard, and ahead of you, the lights of Miami Beach grow. And between these two sets of lights, you are suspended on the dark water, which reflects everything and is itself invisible, so that you seem to be moving through a field of stars. The older man says something to his wife in a low voice, and she laughs quietly, and he takes her hand. The captain does not speak. He watches the water ahead of him with the attention of long practice, occasionally making a small adjustment at the wheel, otherwise still and present in the manner of someone who is very good at being where they are. The crossing takes about 15 minutes, long enough to be its own small experience, long enough to feel the night air on your face and hear the water against the hull and watch the city recede and approach, short enough that you do not wish it longer, though you almost do. Miami Beach at night is not what it was at morning. At morning it was quiet, barely awake, the hotels stirring slowly into consciousness. At night it is what the travel posters promise, the lit facades of the hotels, the warm yellow light spilling from restaurant windows, the couples in their good clothes moving from one venue to the next, the sound of a band coming from somewhere, always from somewhere, in this city that considers music a civic obligation rather than an amenity. The Fontainebleau is not yet built. That particular monument to mid-century ambition will arrive in 1954, further up Collins Avenue, and when it does, it will change the north end of Miami Beach in ways that are still being felt decades later. But there are other grand hotels, other large and well-lit facades, the Roni Plaza, the Saxony, the Sands, the Eden ROC, which is also not yet built, which will come in 1956. What is here now, in 1950, is the generation of hotels that was built in the optimism of the late 30s and the post-war years. Grand enough to be impressive, modest enough to still have a human scale. You walk along Collins Avenue, heading toward your hotel in the middle of the beach. The sidewalks are busy but not crowded. This is not a summer. Saturday night, not the peak of the season. But there are people, and there is life, and there is the sound of music from the hotels, dining rooms, and ballrooms. From the lobby of the Saxony, you can hear a big band, a real big band, with full horns and strings, the kind of orchestra that requires 30 musicians and a leader with a clear vision and years of rehearsal. They are playing something slow and sweeping, one of the great standards, a song that everyone in the lobby knows without necessarily knowing they know it, a song that the brass is playing with a warmth and a fullness that fills the space and spills out through the open lobby doors and onto the sidewalk where you are. You stop for a moment. The song is something Sinatra might have recorded, or Tommy Dorsey, or Artie Shaw, one of the kings of the big band era, which is not quite over yet in 1950, though the writing is on the wall, though the smaller combos and the rising new music called bebop are already changing what jazz sounds like, and within a few years the great orchestras will begin to shrink, and the age of the big band will be something you hear on the radio late at night and feel nostalgic for, the way you always feel nostalgic for the thing that was present when you were young. But tonight, in this lobby, the music is full and present and not yet nostalgic. Tonight, it is just the music, doing what music at its best does, filling a room with something that is bigger than any of the individual people in it, something that makes the ordinary glamorous and the glamorous ordinary, and reminds everyone present that they are, for this moment, the same. You listen from the sidewalk until the song ends. Then the applause, polite, genuine, the sound of a room full of people who have eaten a good dinner and are in the mood to be appreciative of everything. And then the band begins, something slightly faster, something with a lift to it, something for dancing. You move on. Your hotel is 3 blocks north. It is smaller than the Saxony, quieter, the kind of hotel where the staff knows your name after the first day and the sheets are changed every morning. And there are always fresh towels folded in a particular way that suggests someone has taken care with them. A hotel that takes pride in its smallness, in being the right size for the guests it attracts, which are not the celebrities and the newspaper columnists, but the people who come to Miami Beach because they have heard it is beautiful and want to find out for themselves, and have found that yes, it is beautiful. It is actually beautiful in a way that makes them want to come back. The lobby at this hour is quiet. A single desk clerk, a young man, perhaps 22, with a serious expression that he has cultivated because he is young and wants to seem reliable, and which will relax into something more naturally warm in a few more years of practice, nods as you come in. There is a potted palm in the corner. There is a standing ashtray that no one has used in the last hour. There is the sound of the elevator arriving and its doors opening, and a couple stepping out in their evening clothes, heading out late to wherever the last act of their evening will play. You get in the elevator. The elevator in this hotel is a small cage, manually operated, and the operator, another young man, this one, black, who has been working this elevator since 6 this morning and has 6 more hours before his shift ends at midnight, takes you up to the 4th floor with a smooth, professional hand on the lever that raises and lowers the car. You say, "Thank you, good night." He says, "Good night, sir, sleep well." And there is something in this small exchange, in its simplicity and its formality and its genuine mutual courtesy, that stays with you as you walk down the carpeted corridor toward your room. Room 412 is on the ocean side. The window, a wide window with jalousies cranked open to the night, looks directly east, and through it you can see the dark ocean and the white line of the waves breaking and the stars above the horizon. The room is not large. There is a bed, a real bed, a wide bed with a white coverlet, and pillows arranged with hotel precision, and a dresser, and a small armchair, and a bathroom with tiles that are clean and slightly cool to the bare foot. A ceiling fan turns overhead at its lowest setting, moving the air with a gentle patience. You open the jalousies wider and stand at the window. The ocean at night is a different kind of presence than the ocean in the day. In the day, it is active, visual, something to look at and engage with. At night, it is more felt than seen, a sound, a presence, a vast and breathing thing just beyond the dark beach. You can see the white of the breaking waves, periodic and patient, each one completing its long journey from somewhere far out in the Atlantic, arriving at this particular shore at this particular moment, spending itself in white water and foam, retreating, ceasing to be a wave, becoming part of the ocean again. The sound of them is the deepest sound of the night. It is underneath everything, underneath the distant music from the hotels down the beach, underneath the occasional car horn, underneath the mockingbird who has begun again somewhere in the palms below the window. It is the foundation. It is what the night is built on. You stand at the window for a long time, not thinking about anything in particular, just listening to the waves and watching the stars and feeling the warm air and the ceiling fan and the particular piece of being at the end of a day that has given you everything you needed and asked nothing of you in return. There's something about this moment, this particular configuration of ocean and night air and warm room and the sound of waves that is very old. Not the hotel, not the window, not the electrical fan. Those are new. They are 1950. They are specific. But the sound of the ocean in the dark and the smell of salt and the stars overhead that have been there since before any human being was alive to see them, those are as old as anything gets. And standing here at this window, in this room, in this city, in this year, you are connected to all of it, to all the other people who have stood at windows near the ocean at night and felt this particular feeling, this particular combination of smallness and wholeness, this particular understanding that the world is very large and you are a part of it. You should sleep. You turn from the window and sit on the edge of the bed, which is exactly as firm and welcoming as a good hotel bed should be. The coverlet is white and cool to the touch. The pillow, when you lie back against it, is the exact right height and softness. The ceiling fan moves the air above you with a slow and rhythmic turning that you can track with your eyes, the blades making their circular way through the warm room, and you watch them for a while, the way you watch things when you are on the edge of sleep, with an attention that is soft, that does not insist. Outside, the ocean continues. It will continue all night, all year. All the years that follow the waves coming and going, the water moving between the continents on patterns too large for any single human to perceive in a single lifetime. But you don't have to perceive it all. You just have to be here, in this room, on this night, listening to it. The music from somewhere down the beach has softened, or perhaps the night has deepened around it, or perhaps you are simply moving away from the sounds, sliding toward the place where they become part of the background, part of what the night sounds like when you are inside it rather than observing it from a distance. You think about the morning, the gray-blue sky over Biscayne Bay, the Pelican, the diner, Dorothy with her coffee pot and her cheerful efficiency, the beach in the early light, the waves cool on your feet, the lunch at the Cuban counter, the afternoon in Coral Gables, the fountain, the chess players, the bookstore with its dim light and its cat on a chair, the evening by the water, the grouper and the key lime pie, the crossing on the water taxi, the older couple holding hands in the dark, the music from the Saxony, the lobby, the elevator. The day you have spent in this city, in this year, is not remarkable. It will not appear in any history book. No one will write about it. The people you saw, Dorothy, Roberto, the man with the herald, the woman watering the bird of paradise, the couple in the restaurant sharing their pie, they are going about their ordinary lives, which will mostly not be remembered, which is the fate of most lives. And yet the ordinary lives are what a city is made of. The ordinary days are what a year is made of. The named and the unnamed, the documented and the undocumented, the celebrated and the simply lived, all of it together is what makes a time, what makes a place. Miami in 1950. This small, warm, complicated, beautiful, imperfect, alive city at the edge of the continent, at the edge of the tropics, at a particular moment in its own story and in the story of the century. It is, in all its particularity, worth knowing, worth sitting with, worth spending a day in. The waves come in and go out. The ceiling fan turns. The stars, what you can see of them past the glow of the hotels and the street lamps, are steady overhead, and the night, generous and dark and salt-scented, holds everything in it, the city and the water and the people and the music and the ordinary days of ordinary lives. All of it quiet now, all of it resting. You close your eyes. The waves come in and out and in. There is something you should know. And it is this. This day, the one you have just lived, existed. Not as imagination, not as reconstruction, not as something assembled from old photographs and faded newspaper columns and the imperfect memories of people who are no longer alive to correct the record. It existed as days exist fully, in real time, one moment after another, with weight and texture and smell and sound, and all the million small, unremarkable things that fill a day so completely that you cannot hold them all even as they happen. And then it ended. The way all days end, the way this one is ending now, but something about having been in it, even at this remove, even through the gauze of years and distance, leaves a trace. Something about having paid attention, having slowed down enough to look at the morning light on the water and the steam rising from a coffee cup and the shadow of a palm on a hot sidewalk. Something about that leaves you different than you were before. Or maybe not different. Maybe just more awake to what you already know. The waves in, out, the fan turning. The stars holding their positions, those ancient and reliable lights that sailors have navigated by for thousands of years, that have been rising in the east and setting in the west since long before Miami was a city, since long before Florida was a state, since long before anyone thought to stand at the edge of a warm sea and look up and find comfort in the constancy of what they saw. They are there now. They will be there tomorrow. You are here now. The ocean continues its conversation with the shore, not a conversation, exactly, since conversation requires response, and the shore simply receives what the ocean brings and lets it go, more like a song that has been going on for so long that it has stopped being a performance and become simply the sound of the world being itself. The song continues. The night deepens. Miami rests. In the Overtown neighborhood, a jazz musician who played until 2 a.m. is sleeping now. Deeply in the apartment above the club, the music still somewhere in his fingers, in the particular tension of the way he holds them. In Coral Gables, a woman who watered her garden this afternoon is asleep in her bed with the window open and the smell of jasmine coming in from the garden. And she will dream, though she will not remember dreaming, of being somewhere near water, in the fishing village at the far end of the county, which is still a fishing village and will remain one for a few years more. A man who has been up since 3 a.m. to go out on the water is asleep before the sun goes down and will be up again before it rises. In the hotel rooms of Miami Beach, the tourists from Ohio and Michigan and New York are sleeping with the windows open to the ocean air that they do not get at home, that they came specifically for, that is already beginning to seem, even after a few days, like something they will miss. And in room 412 of a hotel on the ocean side of Miami Beach in the year 1950, on a night in which the stars are clear and the waves are measured and the warm air moves through the open jalousies with the patience of something that knows it has all the time in the world, you are sleeping, or nearly. The line between almost sleep and sleep is one of the softest lines in the world, and you are crossing it now not with any effort, not with any decision, but simply by letting go of the day that has held you and letting the night have you, letting the ocean have you, letting the dark and the warm and the sound of the waves dissolve whatever is left of the tension and the thinking and the being awake. Dissolve it gently, the way salt water dissolves things slowly and thoroughly and without asking. The waves come in and out. Miami breathes, and you, in the middle of it, are somewhere between the city and the dream, somewhere between 1950 and wherever you are, somewhere between the remembered and the imagined, in the place that is both and neither, the place where all good nights eventually arrive. Rest now. The ocean will be there in the morning. The morning will be warm, the coffee will be hot, the city will be waiting, and the day, the ordinary, extraordinary, unrepeatable day, will begin again. Rest the waves, the stars, the warm dark, the sound of Miami sleeping, the whole wide city from the bay to the ocean, from the Art Deco hotels to the modest frame houses to the apartment buildings where the ceiling fans turn through the night, from the fishing docks to the hotel lobbies to the small parks where the fountain still runs because someone forgot to turn it off. All of it quiet now, all of it breathing in and out with the slow rhythm of a city at rest. You are here. You are safe. The night holds everything. Sleep. The light, when it comes, will come from the east, the way it always does, over the ocean, over the flat and patient water, reaching first the tops of the palm trees and then the upper floors of the hotels, and then gradually, with the deliberate generosity of a Miami morning, filling everything, warming everything, making of this city once again the place of light and warmth and ordinary beauty that it is. But that is the morning. This is the night. And the night, for now, is complete. The waves come in quietly and go out and come in. Good night, Miami. Good night, 1950. Good night.